Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast. We are talking today about the energy of the Taurus Full Moon. That is on November the 12th, 2019 at 1:34 p.m. Universal Time, London time. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Before we introduce ourselves, let's look at a couple of other bits of housekeeping. Let's do things the other way around for a change. So a reminder that we take questions. We do have a question today that we'll be answering after we've talked about the energies. And the address is weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com. So send us your questions and you may be featured on air. The other thing is that we have a Patreon now, and that's patreon.com/weirdly magical podcast. And we have our first patron. So thank you. And when we get to so many, I can't remember what we said now, we will be doing Patreon only content. So keep coming. It's just $3 a month. To support our podcast and all the podcast running. So is there any other housekeeping, Jen? I don't think so.
Can leave us a review.
Oh yes, iTunes reviews. We love reviews. And preferably written ones if you get time to do that. That would be cool. Yeah.
Yes, we love it. We appreciate it so much.
So Jen, introduce yourself.
Oh, my nose is itchy. I wonder what that means.
Ooh.
Good fortune.
Yeah.
So I'm Jen Duchenne, creator of the Illuminating Journey Cards. I'm an Akashic reader, healer, and teacher. And I guide my clients to discovering the truth of their soul, removing any of the obstacles. And that's me.
Okay. And I'm Louise Eddington. I am a soul astrologer and author of Modern Astrology, Harness the Stars to Discover Your Soul's True Purpose. And also soon to be author of my second book, which is out in February, I think. We're just going through the final edits right now. And I help my clients to live in radical self-acceptance and self-awareness, and to use the tools of astrology and shamanic healing to get to that point. So on with the energies. So a little bit more about this Taurus full moon. Of course, we're recording this on October the 30th, so just before Halloween, and we just had a pretty dynamic Scorpio New Moon that was on Sunday night, just gone. So this full moon will be kind of the culmination point, or the high point of the lunar cycle that began with that new moon. And it takes place, as I said, on November the 12th, 2019, and it's at 19 degrees of Taurus, 19 degrees 51 minutes of Taurus, with the moon conjunct Vesta in Taurus, opposite the sun in Scorpio, conjunct Mercury in Scorpio. The day before the full moon, Mercury passes right in front of the sun, kind of eclipses, only it doesn't block out the sun because Mercury is so small. But it is an eclipse, and it's an event that happens very rarely. The last one was in 2006. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And that's happening on 11/11. So very significant, I think, personally. A couple of other things we'll probably talk about. The full moon is in aspect to Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, which is very significant because we're really in the closing phases of several cycles that end and begin in January 2020. Neptune is conjunct Black Moon Lilith in Pisces, and Neptune is slowing down, station direct. So we'll talk about that as well. And then the lunar nodes have shifted on the full moon. They will have shifted back to 9 degrees of Cancer and Capricorn, because the nodes always move backwards through the zodiac. and they'll be finishing up their journey through Cancer and Capricorn as they go to the first 10 degrees or first 9 degrees of Capricorn and Cancer, and that's significant too. So Jen, there's a lot of numbers I think to talk about.
Yes, indeed. It's quite fascinating. So the first thing that's amazing.
Cards there.
Yeah, go ahead. Cards.
We didn't do our cards.
Oh, let's do that then before we jump into the numbers.
Yeah, you do your card.
No, you showed yours, so you go first.
Well, I pulled the failure card, actually, which is the 7 of discs. And this is actually represented, interestingly, by Saturn in Taurus. So it's very in alignment with the energies. Now, it doesn't mean there is going to be a failure. It means you feel a sense of failure. You feel a sense of restriction or a fear of failing as well. And this can be a result in this energies of this chart. I think, there's going to be a lot churned up from, and there already has been, from the Scorpio New Moon, and then Mercury's going retrograde on Halloween, October the 31st, and will be retrograde for this full moon. I think there's going to be a lot of deep information, a lot of deep shadow work come up, which brings out this feeling of having failed, or feeling of a failure, or fear of failure. But of course, it's just stuff to be processed. So this does not mean you are going to fail. It just means there's going to be some blocks and things coming up for you to look at. So that's how I read that one. So
awesome. So I actually picked from the Illuminating Journey cards that I mentioned 2 cards, because I picked a number, which is number 5. And I find this really fascinating because 5 is about change. And November is a 14-5 universal month. So not only do we have the 11 of November, which is the gateway, and we talked, and Louise talked about the kind of eclipse of Mercury on the 11/11, which is always a magnetic portal. Mm-hmm. And then here we have the 5. So we know we're stepping into change in a really big way. So I find it fascinating that this card came up. So expect the unexpected. And then this card, which has come up before, which is the 13. So for those of you who can't see this card, there's a lot going on. There's the phoenix, dragon, black unicorn, pearls, water, the earth on fire. So it really is about dropping the bomb. That's the picture I get. Dropping the bomb on what we have thought is real, right? Mm-hmm. Thinking about this in terms of being a Taurus moon. Taurus is all about reality in a sense. So this is an opportunity to change our reality. And maybe even the idea of what you were saying, Lou, in terms of failure, or the card, is that the things that we've been working toward that we thought were so important, maybe that is the failure for that to work means we are shifting into a new space. Mm-hmm. This soul portal card is a 13. And of course, 13 is the kind of, you could say it's the Pluto number. It is the number of unexpected change, or Uranus number. It's the number of genius, unexpected change, sudden kind of, and death, because death is, which is also the Scorpio energy, death is what brings us to a new reality. And 1 and 3 make 4, and 4 is all about bringing ideas into matter. So now we're abandoning our old beliefs. We're abandoning all this energy we put into creating a reality that other people have dictated. And now it's time to create the reality we believe in. And so we can only do that through going, this experiment has failed, or it's no longer working, and therefore we must go forward in a new way. I think it's quite amazing just thinking about the power of this moon in terms of it being this the Taurus Full Moon, which is about grounding, earthing, looking at our values, and getting to work in a new way. And we know that Uranus is there, so it has an impact.
Yeah.
It's all about change and using our genius and innovation to make change instead of staying stuck. So the reason we're stuck is because we think that we're supposed to do it the way it's been done. And this is telling us, no, all of that is dying, regardless of whether we want to hold on to it or not.
Yeah, for sure. So did you want to quickly talk about the numbers? I mean, actually, let me just talk about quickly about my perspective overall on the full moon, coming on the back of what's been a very I was kind of laughing with Jen, and those of you that are Facebook friends with me could look back. I posted an image that I happened to just see this morning of what actually happens when lightning, which is very Uranus, hits water, which is Scorpio, and it's called Thor's hammer. It actually has got this tunnel of light kind of thing, and it's crazy. And to have actually caught this, and it does feel like Thor's hammer is kind of shaking up the world at the moment, rocking it up and things. And then we come to this full moon, where we come again. It's a fixed sign, of course, as the new moon was. Taurus is fixed, Scorpio's fixed, and it's almost like we're going to be rocked again out of our fixity. You know, anything that we thought was certain. And that doesn't mean everything's going to collapse, but it does mean you've got to be able to face the changes that are being wielded by this Thor's hammer. If nobody's seen the Marvel movies, he kind of really bashes it down, and the whole world kind of goes woo, reverberations, and and funnily enough, I had a journey of an imaginary journey at the workshop I was at about these ripples going out throughout the world. So very like Thor's hammer. So these things always come together. But on the full moon itself, overall, we've got this Saturn-Pluto conjunction building in January. And this full moon is really aspecting both Saturn and Pluto, who are going to be they'll be less than 5 degrees apart by the full moon. And Saturn, and this Saturn-Pluto conjunction is likely to really bring massive change. Then we've got that eclipse the day before of Mercury passing the face of the sun. So that's the sun's energy being eclipsed. So this is bringing us really in focus to the moon, which is exactly conjunct Vesta on the full moon. And Vesta is, as we've talked about before, it's the flame, the hearth, but it's your inner flame, it's focus, it's commitment. And where are you to focus? You're supposed to focus on your inner emotional life, the moon in Taurus, and what you can do, and what you can do to change your material surroundings and your actual life, or to set things in stone, even to solidify the bits you want to keep. So that's kind of my overall view of the full moon.
Yes, absolutely. So a good overview, because I think that people tend to think that because it's a Taurus moon that everything is about stability, and it is, but it's about the stability that happens when we face eruption, destruction, and how we build from that place, from the ground up or from under the ground, right? So we're shifting our perceptions with this sort of eclipse of Mercury. It's our conscious mind, our conscious life that is being shifted.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the numbers. So what I find very fascinating is that this is happening on the 12th, and we are in a 12 universal year. So that's fascinating. The other part, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but the other part so we have a double 12 happening, the 12 of the year and the 12 of this day. The other part that correlates is the fact that the sun and the moon are at 19 degrees. Remembering on the calendar, we're at 19. This is a 19 year. So this moon, and I think we've seen this happen, you and I have every time we've talked, there's been a couple where we've had this pattern show up before. But this is really the moon that's telling us, okay, things are shifting, because as you may notice or have heard, this is the moon and sun are at 19 degrees 51. So almost at 20. So that's like saying we're almost at the 2020 mark here. Mm-hmm. This is the time where we're having that kind of tear that's happening in our bubble, if you wish. Mm-hmm. So let's just talk about the 12, because it's really important here. 12 is a number of learning, and we learn by doing. We learn through experience, and it's a number of great joy and curiosity and expansion. So it allows us to be a perpetual student, but not a student that just says, oh, I'm just learning this and I'm learning another thing, but really a student of life, a student of wisdom, that we're putting this all into action. We're taking all the stuff we've learned through our lifetime, which is a lot of things. We've learned all these things about how when we do X, Y happens. So when we say something to someone, this is how they respond. And more importantly, this is how we respond. And now we're being given a choice to choose the path of curiosity and joy and go, oh, I can do something different. I can experiment with this. I don't need to do what I did. I can actually do something different. So it's like being in that childlike energy of complete joy of being alive, being connected to the earth, because we know this is about the earth. Our joy is connected to being in joy with the life we have now. Like, we are not going to change the world or our experience by going, someone else out there needs to change, or I'll change tomorrow, or when this thing happens, I will change. It's like, no, this is where I am. Let me take the broadest view, or the best view, or the most joyful view, and go, okay, this is what I need to do. And with the 12, we go 1 + 2 gives us 3. And we have all those numbers because 1 and 2 is 3. So we have the step-by-step approach that we're being given by Saturn, by Taurus, by all of these energies that are telling us. And then we have the lightning that's breaking through our rigidity to say, the Scorpio thing, the water, the Uranus, Thor's hammer, breaking through and saying, that stuff doesn't work. You can't keep doing the same thing in the same way and expect to have a different experience. You have to get curious. This is the whole point about learning, is it's not just to add letters to the back of your name. It really is to go, I understand that my behavior that I've done doesn't work at changing this experience. So how do I get curious? How do I have fun and actually learn something by doing it differently? So I think that's a really key part. The 19, of course, is an amazing number because it is the 1 and 9 make 10. It brings us back to 1. We know we have new beginnings. It is all about us being these kind of looking at the world as an adventurer, right? Mm-hmm. As an adventure, but we're also the adventurer, the one the pioneer who's going to follow our intuition and follow the signs of the earth to create change, to solve problems, to live in a different way. So I think it's less about thinking that we have problems as it is about thinking what is joyfully mine to experience. And, I've done that 100 times. I don't want to do that same shit over and over again. I want a different experience. I want to have different relationships with people. I want to enjoy myself. I want to really speak about the things that are true to me. I don't want to just accept somebody else telling me to shut up or stop doing that, or that'll never work. Like, I don't care about that. I want to go and try it and see, right? So that curiosity is key here. So for me, that's really the bigger picture of where we are, is like the universe is saying to us, look, I've been telling you about this whole year and, leading up all these many years. And now it's kind of this is that moment where you're going to actually feel that expansion or explosion that's going to make you go, oh, I felt that energy of the lightning strike. I actually felt it in my body. and I know that something's changing. I can feel the shift and the rift, and I know, oh, I got to do something different.
That's funny that you said feel it in my body, because as you were talking, I was looking at it thinking it's about embodiment. You know? And embodiment means kind of really stepping into all that you truly are. It doesn't, it's not particularly about the body, though I think there are elements of the body in it as well. You know, it's kind of about really bringing it into, you know, everything, mind, body, spirit, right into you, and embodying everything that you truly are, as Jen said, not what everybody else is saying. And I think the eclipse of Mercury, the eclipse of the sun by Mercury, is saying cut out these other opinions, kind of thing, really.
Right.
You know?
Right. Stop listening to bullshit. Stop listening to the opinions of others, because they don't know what is true for you.
Yeah.
And not only listening, but the thing is acting, because
Yeah.
when we're if we want a different experience, it's not going to be an intellectual experience. It has to be a physical experience. Like, we actually have to say things to people that we were afraid to say. Like, I'm not listening to you anymore, or I'm going to do this, and actually go and do it.
Yeah.
And not just kind of wait for somebody to give you permission. So taking ownership is very much an embodied process of going, well, you know, things look like shit, but I still have a path to take. I can listen to what the earth is saying. I can listen to what my heart is saying. I can go do this. No one can actually stop us from doing these things. Like this cloud or this prison we've been in, right? You think about it in terms of the whole Scorpio Taurus thing, right? There's that thing of the stubbornness or the rigidity in the sense, and I'm a Taurus, so I can say that. But,
I have strong Scorpio, so I could say.
this idea of wanting to not to change because it's going to affect everything around us is all this deep energy from Scorpio, the water, the knowledge of our passion that's been hidden and subjugated and not being allowed to express itself is going, you're like shaking it up and going, screw that.
Yeah.
I'm going to break free of that prison, of that idea, like being underwater and being silenced is the picture that comes to mind, is this idea of being bound and trapped underwater, not being able to speak or really hear clearly or know clearly who we are, because it's all under the surface. And all of that stuff is bubbling to be birthed, right? Because like we're rising with this explosion, it's like, that's what happens when you have an earthquake or something like that, right? An underground or underwater earthquake, and all the stuff that's been hidden comes up to the surface. And yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. The 19, as I talked about, it's endings and beginnings. So innovating things, but remembering there are things from the past, your compassion, your experience that's going to say, I know what happens if I respond in a certain way. So I can do that, or I can go, wait, let me try a different way of doing this. Lou and I have been talking about a little bit before in terms of our relationships personally. So for me, I've been dealing with a lot of different aspects of relationships with my family, with friends, with people I'm working with. And my goal here is not to do what I would have done in the past, which is just get annoyed or keep quiet or bitch about it to someone else, but really just going to the person and saying, I sense there's something going on. This is what I need. This is what's true for me. I don't feel comfortable about what's happening. Let's talk about it. Let's put it out there in the open so we can both say what we need to say and then decide how to move forward. And I'll give you an example. So I was with my family, and I don't know, my daughter and my sister were having an argument or something, and I kind of could see both sides. When you're the observer, you can see that. And so I was trying to whose side do I take, right? And I was trying not to take sides, But then you go into your little patterns. I went into my pattern, and I realized, like, hey, this isn't working, because they're both still annoyed. And now they're annoyed with me too. Right? We're all annoyed. So I just went to my sister. I was telling her, oh, you should do this. And she says, whatever she said, I don't remember, but was, look, that isn't working, or something or other. I don't remember. And whatever she said, I just said, you're absolutely right. And I said, you are entitled to have your opinion. She's entitled to have her opinion. And you're just going to have to deal with your own issues and emotions that come up, and whatever happens, happens. But it's like just knowing you both can express who you are, just like I can, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's that eruption that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Conflict. Instead of walking away or turning the other cheek, we got to go, no, I'm going into the conflict to resolve this issue.
For sure. Absolutely. Or doing things differently, at least, anyway, than you might have done before. However that works for you, I think. Yeah, and that was definitely for you. Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking of a situation in my life where I've decided not to go in and really go into the conflict, because it doesn't work with that person. So,
or maybe you don't have as much
emotional. Yeah.
Or what do you say? To gain or lose, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like when you're working with your family or a loved one, you can't really walk away from
No,
that.
you can't. No, no, no.
Or like you say, do it differently. You may decide not to engage in conflict. You might decide to talk later when they're calmer and say, this is what I really want, or whatever you decide. But it really has to be, I think the bottom line for me is, and of course I can only speak for myself, is I find if I don't express what I feel, then it just stays inside of me and makes me feel bad about myself, and like I'm not trusting myself. So it's like I want to be able to express it, or know if I'm walking away that it's because I've said or done what I need to do. So I'm not running away. And I'm not saying that's what you did. I'm just talking about my own experience, that I'm not leaving things undone. And of course, each of us has to decide, right, according to whatever the situation is that and what it needs, to know that we're trusting that inner wisdom that we have.
No, you're right, though. Speaking for me, there is another situation that I didn't talk to you about, because I did do it already differently. I've already expressed how I feel very clearly, but without aggression, doing it very differently than I may have done at one time in my life. And that's why, because I did it so healthily, it didn't come
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, you feel better, right? But you're also empowered, because then you start trusting yourself more and go, oh, I was right. This is really where I am. Otherwise, you're in fear. Well, I feel like I am. If I'm not expressing myself, I feel fearful because I'm not sure what to trust.
Yeah.
And so if I can say it, and if they like it, they like it. And if they don't, or maybe they're going to tell me something. I mean, I think listening is a really key element. Like, what am I doing that I don't know about, right? That I could maybe shift or agree, and get out of, like I was with my sister. And she was telling me, but you can't tell me what to do, because I have my own opinion. I can do this. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And normally I would have gone, no, you can't, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
So I do want to talk a little bit more about that the transit of Mercury across the face of the sun, just to look back a little bit. The last time that happened was November the 8th, 2006. It was also during a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. So this one will occur at, what did we decide? Was this one? Well, it's on the 11th, but it's at 19 degrees, I think, isn't it? Or pretty sure it is. Or is it 18 degrees?
Oh, right, 18. No, it's at 18.
18, yeah. And Mercury in November the 8th, 2006, it was 2 degrees back. It was at 16 degrees Scorpio. So there is going to be echoes from the end of November the beginning of November 2006, or the end of 2006. Incidentally, I had a quick look at some history, and Mars, NASA announced they'd found evidence of liquid water on Mars almost exactly to the time, because Mercury is information and messages, and that was some quite surprising information. I do remember as an astrologer everybody was like, wow, Mars, the hot, dry, arid planet has liquid water. And that was quite stunning to the astronomical community. So, I would think back to the end of 2006. If you've got a diary, look around, the beginning of November. Just think about what was happening in your life, where you were shifting, what was happening, what information perhaps was coming your way. And there may be similar themes coming up, because like any eclipse, this is an important kind of reset moment where we reset perhaps our ideas about things. Like with Mars, we thought Mars was this just completely dry and arid climate, and here it has liquid water, which was quite a paradigm shift. So just, think back what was happening and be aware of it when it comes to this transit again on November the 11th, because I think something quite paradigm shifting again could come through. So I think that's what I wanted to say about that one. Okay.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. For me, I think what's interesting in terms of it being at 18 degrees is 18 is about endings, and
oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Can be about destruction, especially when things are out of integrity. This moon is about integrity. I mean, whenever we have something that's connected to in this way with Taurus, which is about the structure, the integrity of the structure, right?
And Vesta is very much about integrity.
Right. And she's right there with the moon.
Yeah.
Just having a look at. Oh yeah, she's also at 19. So yeah, the keeper of the flame. And if the flame is all about integrity, it's like the story of the Maccabees, if you know, when they were Hanukkah, which is kind of around this time, where they were keeping the flame alive, the flame of hope. And we have many stories of this. But that flame of hope comes from faith, faith and integrity. So if you're out of integrity, the flame goes out, right? And that's a key story of man's survival or woman's survival in terms of, or human survival, is our flame, our connection to our flame. And when we talk even about Mars, that's about the flame, our flame of our drive. Our sexual drive is not just about sex. It actually is about getting things done and having a passion about something. And so this is about sparking the passion within us, but also destroying. I think to me, it looks like something is ending around this phase
and new information coming in.
Right. So it's going to be a shocking, and it may be something, disastrous, or looks something disastrous that then expands into this information. So, yeah, it'd be interesting.
A couple of words Jen said there kind of triggered something else that I noticed. I did mention already that Neptune and Black Moon Lilith are conjunct on the full moon, and Jen used the word faith, and of course Pisces. This is at 15 degrees Pisces, basically. Well, almost 16. In fact, Neptune is at the very last minute of Pisces on this full moon, and Black Moon Lilith is at 16 degrees and 1 minute of Pisces. So they're only separated by 2 minutes, even though one's at 15 and one's at 16. And Pisces is very much about faith, but it's also Lilith, and Lilith really, to my mind, in some ways, as we're talking about it, I'm thinking she is about deep integrity, because she would not compromise her integrity. The story of Lilith in the Garden of Eden, she would not submit to Adam and would not give up her equality to Adam.
Right.
So in some ways, she had complete integrity to herself. And here we have with Neptune. So it's about faith in yourself, I think, completely.
Right. And even if you, that's a good call, because even if we go to Venus, who is the ruler of Taurus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the idea of being, a female or
Yeah.
whatever, this idea of being that being of beauty and earth, who through the ages in the history is about her giving up her integrity, right?
Mm-hmm.
That story we've been fed over and over again, that women can't be trusted, that women are dangerous, that they draw soldiers, or not soldiers, what do you call sailors to their death, like, the women are evil, all of those things. Those are all the marked stories of all these different aspects of the female. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about, Vesta, considered the Vestal Virgin. Well, virgin is about being true unto yourself,
Yeah.
right? The real meaning. So again, that same thing as what will help us to rise as the
Mm-hmm.
phoenix in this situation is to remember our integrity to ourselves, our integrity to the earth, our relationship with the earth, our relationship to the cosmos. Because I don't know if we mentioned, I think you might have, that series is on the Galactic.
I don't think I did, but I was going to.
That's
But
right.
yeah.
Is that thing of we've got all these females placed, or female energy, or whatever you want to call it, uh, uh, yin energy,
Yeah.
to kind of bring us into a whole new way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
like moving away from this idea that we've been labeled, sluts, or
Passive or meek,
yes,
meek or
right.
submissive, all those words.
Right. Or
Yeah.
we're here just to serve men or
Yeah.
serve someone else's ideals. And this is all about, no, we're here to serve through ourselves, serve these things
Mm-hmm.
we believe in, the earth, in love, in compassion, in kindness, and in standing up for ourselves, right? There is all of that.
Mm.
And it's from the cosmos with this galactic center thing all the way through down.
New information coming in too. Yeah, like
Right.
with the Mercury crossing the sun. Yeah.
Right. And so we're going from the highest cosmos into the deepest waters of the earth with all of this idea of really uh, bringing lightning into every part. And what is lightning, right? It's light. We're
Yeah.
bringing light, electric light, and we are beings made of electricity into every part of our world. So it feels like we're going to have this kind of awareness that we can see what we haven't seen and understand what we haven't understood, so we can take a different action. Go, oh, wow, I'm free.
Because Mercury, as well, to go back to it, going across the face of the sun, Mercury is the energy of psychopomp as well, which is death walking. Which is actually, because I've got trained in psychopomp work, is actually taking a dying person through to the other side, and tethering them and bringing them back so they can get comfortable with seeing the other side. So literally that's what we do with dying people, but we are going to be doing this. We're going to be able to see things as kind of other dimensions, if you like, that we haven't seen before. And yeah, that will bring the endings of old ones, which may bring up, to go back to that card, that sense of I may have failed, or a bit of fear of failure. But you haven't failed, because something might fail, but doesn't mean you have failed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't attach yourself to a project like the thing is, you can go back and say, what could I have done different?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? Remembering the steps, the 1, 2, 3. What do I need to do for this next project, this next time, that really will help me to ground this idea that I'm bringing into matter? So yeah, it's pretty exciting. Also, when we think about, I think I was just noticing how many ones here. We have the 28, we have the 19, so there's quite a lot of ones. Chiron's at 1. We actually have quite a lot of ones that are operating. So we know this is a lot about us taking the stand for what we believe in.
Yeah.
And just looking, to me, when I like to look at like politics and stuff, because I think it's a great reflection of what's happening in our world. And just looking at how people now, like even the news and stuff, are kind of slowly coming to a place where they're voicing something different.
Yeah.
And we may be impatient with it because we're like, get on with it. But the fact that they're doing it is kind of remarkable when you think they were all yes men. And seeing other people who are following a fake idol and choosing to lie for somebody who doesn't care about them, right? And I think that's where is this reflective in our own lives? Where are we doing this? And I think Lou and I talked a little bit about in our personal experiences of putting up with stuff and shutting up because it's going to cause chaos, or they're going to be upset with us or something like that, and not saying anything. All that does is erode our sense of self and our personal empowerment.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like me, I look at it and I'm like, if I was one of those interviewers or something, I'd be a lot more hard ass about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, answer the question, or if you don't want to answer the question, I was laughing with my roommate the other day. She have an eject button, like if they don't answer the question.
Yeah. Or one of those pits that opens up. Yeah.
Right. So that's like, we have the choice of saying, I'm not going to waste my time talking to you because you're not answering the questions. Like, just people in our lives who just refuse and keep answering something else or taking the subject somewhere else. Those are the times we can walk away and say, you know what, this conversation isn't working, so I'm moving out of here, right?
And that actually kind of as soon as you started talking about that, I was reminded about the nodes. I did mention at the beginning that they've moved back to 9 degrees, and so they'll be going 9-8, down the count. They move backwards. Now, this is the first decan of Capricorn for the South Node, and the North Node will be the first decan of Cancer. And that means that the first decan of each sign is the most that sign can be, because the first decan of Capricorn is the Capricorn decan, and Cancer decan. So the coming eclipses that we've got in December and January are going to be on the nodes in the first decan. And this kind of finishes up the concentration, if you like. And that's where it comes back to what Jen was saying. So kind of about double boundaries. You've got recreate double boundaries, or double down on creating your strong boundaries and your strong foundations and things. And also doubling down on letting go, releasing attachment to man-made law and rules, not God's law, not universal law. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the bullshit laws that we've made. And that doesn't mean you don't follow them. We're in a society, but it's the ones it's just the attachment to them, and living by the shoulds and living by these societal restrictions. And conversely, that means we'll be doubling down on the Cancer. They're moving towards knowing that we're one big family, that this big connection and nurturing is where we're being asked to move towards. So I found it interesting that you were saying about like the eject button. We'll be wanting to eject that those
Right.
to move beyond our boundaries.
Yes. Exactly. That is an excellent point. And I think also this idea of learning to deal with hatred, learning to deal with anger of other people means that in a different context means we can say, I'm not listening to you talking to me in that way, but if you have something you want to talk about in a normal way without insulting me, etc., we can talk about it. And going, like, sometimes you just can't talk to people, but you can just say, yeah, I see that you're struggling, and that's okay. I don't need to save you. On the other hand, you kind of go out into my outer circle because I don't want you kind of mudding the works. I need to focus on what I need to focus. So going, yeah, you have absolutely right. Just like I was saying to my sister. So it's interesting that came through, because it's like, you have the right to have any emotion you want, to have any response you want.
Yeah.
But I have the right to go, you're moving out of my circle. I'm not dealing with it. I'm
Yeah.
not stopping you from doing what you're doing. You're just moving out of my sphere. And then there's certain times, like when people are being entitled or whatever, that we have to be a little more rigid.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important. Like, we tend to be afraid that somebody is going to accuse us of something. And I see that in the kind of in the media and in the in the political fields. We're afraid of being accused of something, so we'll lose our standing. So we bow down and don't say anything. But that's complete bullshit, because the opposite happens, right?
Yeah.
When we're afraid to lose our standing, it makes us a coward. And then people will say those things to us, like, yes, or they'll know, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you won't even have to say anything. So is it worth giving up the truth of who you are? Like, what comes to mind is this guy in the States who just went and did this career, what do they call it? Uh, State Department career military guy that came forward and gave information.
Oh, the guy who testified.
Embodiment, yes. Here he takes a risk
Yeah.
to come out and speak, because he knows he could be in danger. He knows that he's exposing people. He knows that he'll have to probably give up his career. I mean, I don't know exactly, but he's taking a huge risk.
Yeah.
Right. But he is standing in his integrity. And to me, that's the thing. Like, we got to look at those kind of people and seeing what are they doing. And those are the people we want to emulate, because they're showing us what it means to be integrity.
Absolutely.
And as for those that tend to tell us what not to do, it reminds me of that one, Brené Brown, who says, if you're not in the, I don't know how it goes, if she has a thing, like, if you're not in the fracas with me, don't give me advice. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Something like that. I don't remember the wording, but
yeah.
I think that's a key part. I just did also wanted to mention, because I know we probably want to move on, is that what's fascinating is Mercury for this moon is at 17 degrees, and we're on a 17 universal day, and 17 is about leaving a legacy. So we know this aspect now, that Mercury, who's just gone through this eclipse and kind of opened the gateway for us in this enormous way, whether we recognize it or not, just feels very spacious and cosmic, is now telling us, now this is the time where you want to leave your legacy or build on something of value to yourself going forward that has not been there before. So it's an opportunity, right? Because when we think differently, we do things differently. And that's the key, because it's our belief systems, which is also about Jupiter, right? Jupiter being...
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and Jupiter, because Jupiter is so close to Ceres. In effect, Jupiter and Ceres are both on the galactic center, the center of our galaxy,
Right.
on high ascendant, beaming down this new information. But the galactic center actually works in a similar way to the eclipse. It eclipses old stuff, because it's a black hole at the center of the galaxy. It kind of sucks out what's no longer needed and then emits some new information. So we're getting it on both sides there. So it's like, wow.
I know. Amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Shall we do our symbols? And then we've got a question to do. So,
right. I just wanted to mention about connecting to the earth at this time is probably a really good idea.
Yeah.
Water. I wouldn't eliminate your relationship with water either.
Oh, no.
Going out into nature, remembering the power of the earth that we have not used. Like, unless you have a native kind of upbringing where you've actually been connected to the earth and had this amazing relationship of reciprocal relationship, that it's time to build that, because we are going to need it going forward.
I think there's a lot to do with the body as well here, and connecting your body with the earth, but also you said about not losing your connection with water, I think, and I have noticed a lot of people doing it quite suddenly since the new moon, saying, you know, I'm eating healthier, I'm putting cleaner things in, I'm drinking more water. I think it's just becoming more mindful about the connection, or the, you know, we've so lost connection with the natural cycles and with the earth and with our bodies. So there's a lot about that. Yeah, you're right, Jen. Yeah. All right, Sapien symbol.
All right, so 20 degrees of Taurus, wisps of wing-like clouds streaming across the sky. So the keynote is the awareness of spiritual forces at work. Wow, that's just kind of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Any emergence of life potentialities from the depth of the vast unconscious is answered by the spiritual activity of superconscious forces in a cosmic kind of antiphony. The individual has taken a new step in their evolution, should look for the signature of divine powers confirming their progress. It may reveal the meaning of what is to come next. The wing-like clouds may also symbolize the presence of celestial beings, which can be devas, angels, etc., blessing and subtly revealing the direction to the direction of the wind of destiny. And let's see, this is all about receiving blessings. So from the
of supernatural forces, and that
right.
that kind of speaks to the galactic center and etc. that we talked about to me. So.
Right. And being awakened, right?
Yeah.
From my card with the, you know, with all the beings.
Yeah.
What they were talking, what we were getting in terms of being awakened to something you may never have seen before, right?
Fantastic. And then the Chandra symbol, I love it as well. Okay, it's a fork in the road with a blank signpost. Getting inside of things, discovering what they are like when you have no idea any longer what you want out of things or where anything really is going. All the riches of subtle texture can only begin to arise now and to touch your soul. This journey has gone on forever, but now the deep earth calls you once again and you cannot refuse. All roads lead to this same place where it all flips over and you're tumbled to the inside where you meet yourself for the first time. This was not who you expected to see. This other self has lost everything. That goes back to the failure thing, but has found its way to be here at last, on the inside of the world, ready for anything. No preferences, nothing to accomplish, nowhere really to go, just here, in the fiber of existence, home free. Wow. Wow.
Right.
That speaks to what we've said about the embodiment and the being with the earth and everything. And, you know, all that bullshit that some of our our kind of woo community speaks about ascending home and all that kind of stuff. This is it, really.
Right. This is where it's happening inside of us, and the external is just pointing us to that awareness of it's an embodiment, right? The soul entering the body, and our spirituality being a much bigger part of how we live.
Right. Fantastic. All right, shall we do the question?
Yes. So
okay, so well, thank you, Jen. I think Jen emailed us before. Oh yes, she has had, but that's fine. We don't mind, Jen. Send as many as you want. This is Jen K. But anyway, her question is, romance and compatibility are what bring a lot of folks into the astrology fold, but it's often treated with a silly or superficial lens. What do you look for in understanding someone's romantic values, behavior patterns, how they change over a lifetime? Do elements play a role in this understanding? And she says, I'm speaking as Sun, Mars, Venus in Aries, but thought others might be interested in hearing about your perspectives on personal partnerships in the midst of these larger transits of community connections. Well, I think from my perspective, I would say that I agree that sometimes romance and compatibility are treated with a silly or superficial lens. But more, I would say, in the media, really. You know, it's like there are all these magazine articles of, you know, Sagittarius should never marry a whatever, you know, and that kind of thing. And I don't deal with that. From an astrological perspective, we have to look at the connections in the whole chart. We look at the descendant, which is the sign on the cusp of the 7th house, to have a look at what energy we attract and are attracted to in our lives. We also look at the 8th house, which is the house of marriage, for kind of love relationships, I would say, for what kind of relationship your soul desires. There's so much to it. You know, real relationship astrology goes in depth. But, you know, of course, people want some easy to digest information. And in fact, I've done a little bit of it in the book I'm going to be publishing in February. You know, it's kind of basics, like signs that are next to each other can't have difficulty seeing each other. But I would never say and that's one example. Signs that are square to each other are more likely to have conflict. But tension can sometimes be exciting and passionate too. So I never say, I don't like the, you know, oh, I would never marry a Scorpio approach, because a Scorpio, for example, could have a whole stellium in Sagittarius or something. There could be more Sagittarius, so it's too simplistic. But I do understand that people want some easily digestible information too at times. So that's my kind of approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that out in the media and even in movies and stuff, we're fed kind of a whole host of rubbish about relationships and romance. And no, it actually takes work to have romance, and you know, just beyond the beginning where you're just like everything's wonderful, and then when you get to know each other, a lot of, to me, when I look at the idea of romance or relationships, is when somebody is aggravating us or squaring us or creating conflict, it's an opportunity for growth, for us to go, oh, what is triggering inside of me? And so what do I need to change? So everyone who shows up in our lives, everything we experience is a part of the plan, right? Our blueprint, whether it's our astrological blueprint, our numerology blueprint, or anything else. It's all about a plan we've put in place to have an opportunity to grow. So we can either get, oh, this person's doing it to me, I'm doing it back to them, or what do I need to learn? What can I do different to have a different experience if I want to be with this person? Like, bottom line for me is, it doesn't really matter what sign you are. If you have an attraction to someone who feels right to you, if it feels like a lot of hard work and it feels painful, then it's probably a sign like, I don't want to be here, kind of matching to the idea that right, like, this isn't for me. I don't want to be in a suffering relationship, and I can move away if the person doesn't work. Like, if it's too much hard work, then, and that person's not interested or whatever, okay, weird shit keeps happening, you can say no, you can turn away, because there's going to be someone else who, you know, and this is how we learn about, just like we were talking about the 12, this is about learning in action. So we're going out, we're having relationships, we're going, yeah, that works, that doesn't. Okay, you know, either this person or the next person, it's the same relationship, really. What do we need to do? The other thing here is that you have a numerology chart as well as the astrology. So sometimes it's really fascinating when I look at the numbers of a person, not just their regular, but the numbers on their chart, and see how compatible they are. And it's often surprising because you think, oh, well, oh yeah, they both Scorpios or whatever it is that matches. I don't know the romance thing. But yeah, well, obviously they get on together, and then you go deeper and you realize like they have issues, fundamental issues that are hard to understand. Like if you have somebody who looks at the big picture and doesn't like looking at the details, and then you have somebody who likes looking at details and isn't interested in the big picture, that's going to create conflict, right? Because it's something you're incompatible about. So it's like, unless you're somebody who just loves the person and you don't care about it, and then that's a whole different story, right? That's a spiritual path. So for me, I think the most amazing thing about romance that's not really popularized is that it allows us to take the spiritual path. It's an incredible opportunity to really find compassion and love within ourselves for someone else and really love someone unconditionally, right, regardless of how they behave. And that's the key, right?
And
That's the amazing key.
And all these relationship things can apply to significant friendships as well. There's such a focus on who am I going to marry kind of thing. It's like, there's a lot more to relationships than just that. And I think personally, I don't love doing relationship astrology per se. I do it for current clients who ask me to see how they can work to better in a relationship or understand each other better. But this whole of idea of are we compatible? Should I marry him or her or whatever? I'm not interested in doing it, to be honest, because as Jenna said, there's that kind of je ne sais quoi. There's that attraction quality too, and are you both evolved enough to work beyond any incompatibilities to, there's so many factors. It's like, I didn't even look at my husband's chart until we'd been together for quite a long time because I wasn't interested in judging him by his astrological chart. So.
Right, which I think is an excellent point, right? Because we have a preconceived notion. If you have beliefs around certain things and then you see it in black and white, you're going to go, oh, that's never going to work, or this is what's going to happen, or typical, like we do anyway with people. Oh, you're a Sagittarius, that's why you're doing this. Oh, it's Scorpio. I mean, I remember people always telling me I was stubborn because I'm a Taurus, right? And yeah, that's one way to put it, right? But the other way is,
or you're steady and reliable.
or whatever. I know
whichever.
I know what I value. You can say stubborn, or I know what I value. It's like, this is it. And I've seen, like, when people get less invested in wanting a perfect partner, wanting somebody to become who we need them to be, and we go, I just love being around you. I don't care what you do, unless, of course, it's right out of our value system. That's different.
Well, then you probably wouldn't.
Hopefully you wouldn't be with them. Like people who stay with partners they're fearful of. That's a terrible thing, and so many people do, right? I think I used to, when my ex-husband, when we used to have arguments, I used to just hate it. I just couldn't stand the conflict and the arguments about things that.
Same with me and my relationship. It crushes me when we have a fight. We do occasionally, but not very often. So.
Right, you get better and better, or you split up. So that's why it's my ex-husband. But so that was, for me, at some point I was like, I just want to be happy. I don't want to argue about bullshit. So it was probably important to him, but it wasn't important to me, and so we parted ways. But I think that's the key, is not expecting someone to do things, like behave a certain way. Because I noticed that a lot of times, say with women, I don't know as much about men, but I'm sure they have things they do that are annoying. But with women who are talking about their husbands, they have all these, like, there's like these typical things we do. Like, oh, he's such a pain, he does this or that. Like, those are our choices of kind of keeping a story alive that is not necessary. It's a fairy tale, not one that supports us. If we are going to tell a story, let's tell a story that actually makes us feel good about who we are and our partner. I love that they do this or whatever. And
I do want to say, she did ask, do elements play a role in understanding? Speaking of kind of a stepping back out of the minutiae that we've gone into, the elements do play a role to a degree. Like, you can look at somebody's astrological chart. I don't do the numerology as much as Jen, so I'll speak to the astrology. But, if somebody's heavily water and somebody's heavily fire, if you think about the elements of fire and water, it can either create steam or water can douse the fire, or you can think of the elements yourself in that way, but it's more than just the sun sign. It's so really you'd have to look at the whole elemental makeup. And even then, water and fire, they're not generally overly compatible per se, but that doesn't mean they can't work either. The steam could be quite fun and passionate. So
right. So basically it's a layered thing. It's many layers. And so everything counts into, it's like you're creating a picture. You're using the astrology, the elements. I think that may be more, for me, may be more impactful in some senses, right? Because we live. It's like are you an emotional being? It's like those things they say, what's your love language or something. That's kind of like a elemental thing, right?
Like my husband and I are both fire signs. We're both Sagittarius, and we've got 2 water children, and we can see that we're too fiery for our watery children sometimes, and sometimes they douse our fire a little bit. That doesn't mean we're incompatible completely. We just maybe have to be more understanding of each other. So
right. But it definitely makes it easier if you have an element that is more compatible, or signs that are more compatible, or numbers that are more compatible, right? So being aware, all of those things are important. At the end of the day, I think what's the most important, and maybe that's because of the sign that I am, and my thing is like, it's, which, we could certainly talk about, but it's to me, it's what are you trying to achieve with what you have, with this, or what you want relationship? What's the end goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, then. I think we've gone on long enough. So let's quickly wrap up by you telling people where they can find you.
So you can find me at jendushen.com. That's my website. My cards are also there, jendushen.com/illuminating journey cards. I have a monthly group, Soul Pillar Salon, which is also on my website. And you can find me on Facebook. I have a group there. We Belong Here. I changed the name. So it's a free group. And then you can find me Instagram and everything. You can Google my name, Jen Dushen. It's all under Jen Dushen.
And similarly, my name, Louise Eddington. You'll find me on everywhere. But my website's louiseeddington.com. I have a membership community that you can find on my website. I also have a free Facebook group, Planetary Magic Cafe. We often have a bit of fun in there. I do readings. You can buy my book. And Instagram. I'm loving Instagram lately. I'm having lots of fun on there. So find me on any of them. And a reminder again that we do take questions, weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com. And we have our Patreon, Weirdly Magical Podcast on Patreon. And please leave us reviews on iTunes, and have a happy full moon on November the 12th. It's quite a big one. We're entering into a hugely transformative time. So stick with us. We've got eclipses coming up, and then we've got these massive conjunctions in January, and then it doesn't end because there's more to come after that. So it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.